Hello, welcome to Automated Reporting with Dashboards as part of DataKind's Nonprofit Data 101 program. This program is designed to build the capacity of nonprofits and social sector actors to be able to use data science to improve the work that they're doing. We start with 1-hour webinars on these specific data science topics, which today is automated reporting with dashboarding. And then there's the opportunity for participants to participate in a 30-minute one-on-one consultation with DataKind to learn more about the topic and what they can do to improve their data science capacity and do more in the service of their mission. So who are we? Who are you talking to? We're DataKind. Our mission is to harness the power of data science and AI in the service of humanity. And we do this by helping mission-driven organizations unlock their data science potential ethically and responsibly. We're the technical translators. We bring together brilliant data science experts and AI experts with social impact professionals, regardless of their technical skills, whether they're data scientists as well or otherwise, to collaboratively design and build data solutions that will address tough social challenges. And so in the next hour, we're going to focus on automated reporting and dashboarding. You'll learn about what it is, the basic mechanisms of how dashboards and automated report building work, software solutions, different tools that you can use that have different options for developing those dashboards, and examples of how this can be done and what it looks like practically in social impact organizations. We recognize that a lot of material out there on automated reporting and dashboarding doesn't talk specifically about use cases in the social sector. So we're really going to focus on making sure you see what it looks like for our folks doing similar work to you. And of course, resources for how to get started with dashboarding and automating your reports at your organization. We'll talk about a lot of different tools. We'll give resources for several different tools, but make sure you also have resources that might help you get started no matter what tool selection works for you and whatever your budget is. We want to enable you to learn. As we go, please share any Q&A you have in the Q&A feature on Zoom. Before we get started, I want to introduce you to the team I have with me for this session. My name is Rachel Wells. I work at DataKind as a Senior Manager of Community Programs. Please feel free to reach out to me at my email here if you have any follow-up questions about this course or the program or anything in how DataKind supports social impact organizations. With me, I have Jaya Pakuri, who is a longtime brilliant DataKind San Francisco chapter volunteer. So he's done a lot to support social impact organizations in increasing their data maturity, including advising on different software and tool selections, dashboarding, and different types of projects with DataKind. In his day job, he is co-founder and chief technology officer at Bonfire Analytics. Additionally, we have Harsha Josula, and Harsha is a DataKind partner. We've worked for a long time with the Black Wealth Data Center, with Harsha in particular, as he is data director at that organization. And DataKind and the Black Wealth Data Center have partnered on some fantastic dashboarding solutions, which you'll get to see and learn more about as we take a deep dive later on in the session. And so with that said, here's what we're going to cover. Jaya will kick us off with an intro to automated reporting and dashboarding, and then Harsha will do a deep dive case study with the Black Wealth Data Center showing how some of these tools and best practices can be used in the social sector and how you might use that. Then I'll come back and share some more examples of ways that DataKind has supported social impact organizations in automated reporting and dashboarding. We'll have a long time for questions, and then we'll close with some resources that you might be able to take with you to start to implement these things in your time. So with that, I'll pass it to Jaya to share an intro of what is dashboarding and automated reporting.
Thank you, Rachel. So what is it? Dashboards are a visual representation of key data insights of your nonprofit organization that are constantly updated as the underlying data is evolving. And paired with that is automated reporting, which is the distribution of data dashboards without manual intervention. And it's often initiated by either a set schedule, something like daily, weekly, monthly, or in response to specific triggers, such as when a metric crosses a certain threshold, or even a live database connection, which means that it's more real-time distribution of these dashboards. And dashboards and automated reporting can be used for both internal and external functionalities. When used internally, they support key stakeholders in decision-making processes that are internal to the company. But then when used externally, it's regarded as embedded analytics. They enable outside users to interact and gain value from their nonprofit organization's data. And so there are a few typical steps for constructing the dashboard. The first step is to define the goal of the research objective. This is often a organization-wide knowledge that pertains to the overall mission or the product vision of the nonprofit as a whole, which means that typically everyone in the organization these goals. Secondly, is identifying the key metrics for the dashboard. And so this would be based on the specific objective or goal of the organization. And it involves engaging with stakeholders or end users, depending on whether it's an internal or external facing dashboard, where stakeholders for the internal dashboarding use cases these metrics are decided with to understand what should be tracked and to follow the progress of whether goals. After identifying these key metrics, involves connecting relevant data sets to whatever the chosen dashboarding tool. Later on, we'll go through some example dashboarding tools. And in this step, different data sets are often connected together, which can either be done prior to connecting to the dashboarding tool or after connecting to the dashboarding tool. If data sets are connected together prior to being connected to the chosen dashboarding tool, it is often more code intensive, with requiring languages like SQL and Python, or requiring using a separate tool aside from the dashboarding tool that is focused more on ETL and transformation of data. If the data sets are connected after first all being connected to the dashboarding tool, then it is still possible to connect to do transformations and clean the data, but it might be limited by the functionality of your chosen dashboarding tool. After connecting the data set both to the dashboarding tool and all the data sets to each other, is developing the visualizations, which track the key metrics and addresses the goals of the organization. After creating these visualizations, they have to be validated with stakeholders or end users to make sure that these visualizations are tracking what needs to be tracked. And so this validated steps is a very iterative process with the connecting data sets and developing visualization. After getting feedback from the insights and created, sometimes you have to go back and connect more data sets or change how the data sets are connected. And then after that, we create different visualizations or tables which track the metrics, the key metrics better. Finally, after the dashboard is in its final state and all the insights are being and visualizations are validated, it's setting up regular data updates and automation. And so this automation step pertains to setting up automated reporting where the dashboard is delivered at some cadence, whether as we mentioned before, be based on time or it could be based on specific triggers, which the stakeholders are interested in automating. And so during this, whatever cadence is specified, these reports will be delivered via some source. It could be like through email, it could be through Slack to the end users as well as stakeholders. Now, there are many best practices in creating dashboards. So one thing is that creating the dashboard should be through collaboration between data analysts, data scientists, as well as data engineers, and the key decision makers when possible. And data analysts, data scientists are usually the individuals leveraging the dashboarding tool and creating the visualizations. And when possible, they'll be working with data engineers to ensure that the underlying data is clean, formatted, and generally trustworthy for consumption. And then they'll also be working with business decision makers to understand the KPIs and metrics that should be tracked to visualize the dashboard. And so this is typically in a bigger organization where there'll be different roles for data analysts, scientists, or data engineers and decision makers. But like smaller organizations, we might be overlapped or might even be the same person performing both these roles. The next best practice is to keep it simple. It's important to really display relevant insights on the dashboard and to really avoid adding individual one-off requests that may or may not have actual business value. That way there's no like insights or metrics that deviate from the primary goal of the dashboard. And finally, data reliability is key for trust. It's really important when creating the dashboard and creating these insights to validate that all the data is correct and all the metrics are being reported. If there's some problem in the reporting or in the final metrics, which result in fact being incorrect or wrong, then stakeholders will lose trust in the dashboard. Probably affect whether it's being used or in reporting.
So some of the popular, now we'll talk about some of the popular dashboarding tools. Some of the popular legacy options can be seen below here, which is Tableau, Looker, and Power BI. Tableau is probably one of the most well-known dashboarding tools. It can create really robust and aesthetically pleasing visualizations and typically does well on smallish sets of data. However, as data scales, Tableau can often be more slow and harder to use. But Tableau does have a great community of active users, which enables great knowledge sharing and tutorials. Looker is another tool which is owned by Google and is really good for creating dynamic tables and visualizations on larger sets of data. One of the key benefits of Looker is that it helps with repeatability of defining and leveraging metrics across different dashboards. So if one user defines certain metrics, it can be used organization-wide. However, this is probably one of the most expensive dashboarding tools, and is not feasible for smaller teams on a budget, even with like nonprofit discounts. And then finally, Power BI is probably one of the cheapest and budget-friendly options in dashboarding tools, and also enables a lot of great visualizations. However, like Tableau, it can be slow when creating visualizations on larger sets of data, and also lacks some of those data cleaning and transformation capabilities. And there's a few other options in the legacy options like AWS QuickSight, ClickSense, Domo, and Zoho Analytics. Moving on to other dashboarding tools, which have been are newer options and have been popular for bigger data needs. Some of the main tools here are Preset, Metabase, and Sigma. All of these tools are really good with larger sets of data and can scale while the data sets might get even to the multi-millions or billions of rows. Preset also is built on an open source framework called Apache Superset. So it has a good community of contributors. Metabase is one of the cheaper options when it comes to embedded visualizations, which means being able to embed visualizations in a user-facing product. However, for all of these tools, when the data is on the smaller side and isn't as much like larger data sets, it might not be as needed. And so as your nonprofit's data size grows, these could be tools to start looking into. But if the data right now is not too large, they might not be as applicable. Also, customization of and like creating robust visualizations with a lot of customization is not as possible with these tools. There's a few other tools that also fit these needs, such as ThoughtSpot, Xflow, and Streamlit. And so now I'll pass over to Harsha to show some external facing dashboards with that the Blackwell Data Center has built.
Thank you, Jaya. Good morning, everyone. My name is Harsha Malajasila. I'm the Director of Data at the Blackwell Data Center. The Blackwell Data Center is funded by Bloomberg Philanthropies, and we had our public launch in September of last year. So we are coming up on our first year. The mission of the Blackwell Data Center is to democratize data, racial wealth equity data, centering the data on Black households, so that people and organizations who want to address racial wealth equity actually have the data and the information they need. We do this by collecting information from publicly and privately available data sets, and we create public-facing data dashboard tools. I'm going to now show you all a live demo of our platform. So I'll start sharing my screen. Everyone can see my screen, right? Okay, so central to our platform are our Explore data pages. We understand that Black wealth or racial wealth in the United States has an intersectional component. So we have around 6 topic pages: assets and debt, business ownership, education, employment, home ownership, and population demographics. For the sake of this demo, we'll spend some time looking at our assets and debt Explore data page. When you come to our assets and debt Explore data page, you will see that we organize information starting at a national level and we go all the way down to the local level. We have a section around data methodology because we believe that it is really important for us to be transparent about both the data sets that we've used in building these data visualizations, as well as the data transformations that the Blackwell Data Center has made to present this data. So the first chart that you see here is our time series chart. Right now, we are looking at the median total assets for households. We have information that starts in 2007 and goes all the way back to 2019. We have information that is just aggregated by race. So you'll see that in 2019, the median total assets value for Black households was $53,000. And for white households, it was around $306,000. We have an annotation here at 2008. So that is when the Great Recession has happened. And you will see that across all races between 2008 and 2013, a decline in the median value of total household assets. But starting 2013, almost all households except for Black households have seen an increase in the median value. You will also see that between white and Black households, there is a gap in the value of median total assets. We have a variety of filters that we make available with each of our data visualizations. Right now, we are looking at assets. If you want to look at net worth, you can choose net worth. And then again, it'll show the information. In 2019, the median net worth for white households was around $189,000. For Black households, it was around $24,000. And this is a widely quoted statistics that white households have 8 times the net worth of Black households in the United States. Each of these visualizations, we also link to where the data is coming from. Here, the data is coming from the US Federal Reserve, and the survey is a survey of consumer finance. The data center spends a lot of time bringing you the latest data that is available. So the latest years of data that is available for the survey of consumer finance is 2019. You can download this either as a PDF or an image and include it in your reports. And Jaya mentioned data visualization tools. We've built our public-facing data visualizations tools using Tableau. Now, just for the interest of time, I'll quickly jump to one of our state-level maps. We've seen what assets, debt, and net worth look like at a national level. Now let's see like how they play out at a state level. That we are looking at median total assets. Now here, like the default option for race is all. I'm going to switch it to black. And you will immediately see that like we've suppressed data for like a majority of states in the United States because the survey does not have like enough information on like median assets, debt, or net worth for like Black households. But you can see that like in Pennsylvania for like Black households, the median value of assets was 26,420. I can now change a filter and look at what net worth is going to look like. And then in Pennsylvania, it's for Black households, it's 11,550. A lot of information is absent for like Black households. Like if we move it to white households in the United States, just because of how the population is within the United States, you'll have like a lot more data. So one of the things that we often have to grapple with is just the quality of data that is available that is disaggregated by race. Finally, I will show you like one of our local maps. I know a lot of you work at a local level. So in our assets and debt page, we have 3 local level maps. Right now, we are looking at home ownership rate. The default selection is at a county level. So like let's pick a county. I'm just going to click on a county here. And so once I click on a county, the map should populate the information of the county in the table below. So for Sweetwater County, the Black population percentage is 1.2. The overall homeownership rate is 74.5. But if I place my cursor at the county, you will see that when information is broken down by race, for Black households in this county, the homeownership rate is only 40%, while the overall homeownership rate by county is 74.5%. That is why we find the ability to show information disaggregated by race provides additional context than a top-line metric. So this is information at a county level. We can also go down to a zip code level by moving from county to zip code. It's going to now like populate the map for all the zip codes in the United States. If someone's in the chat wants to give me a name of a city that you want to look at the information for, I can let's search for that city. I'm going to look at the chat and see. Seattle. Okay. Can we get a city with a higher Black population? Atlanta. Okay, let's go to Atlanta. So I'm going to search for Atlanta, Georgia. And then basically now you see all of the zip codes in Atlanta, Georgia. One thing I'm going to call out is that this is a heat map. So the dark brown zip codes are the zip codes in Atlanta that have the lowest homeownership rate. So let me click it to one zip code. This is 30318. You will see that the Black population percentage for the zip code is 52.9, but the homeownership rate for the zip code is only 38.7. I'm going to try and click another zip code with a higher homeownership rate. So this zip code is 30087. Here, the Black population percentage is 63.5, but the homeownership rate is 83.4. So by providing like information disaggregated by race at a zip code level, we hope that policymakers, change makers, community organizers actually can use our maps to like target and identify communities that are in need of investments, that are in need of like outreach services. So this is how you can use like local maps to target communities that are in need of services or interventions in your community. Finally, I'll show you our newest tool. We call this the Black Wealth Indicators tool. We built this tool based on user feedback. The data center collects a lot of user feedback. And one thing we were asked is like, there is no ability to like compare counties. So this tool actually allows you to compare counties. So right now, I'm just going to select one county in Alabama. you have an option to select a second county. So I'm going to select another county in Alabama, and let's compare Butler County to Elmore County, and you click on generate graphs. So this visualization is actually built not using Tableau, but JavaScript-based D3 language. So once you click at generate graphs, you will see this information being populated. So we have some context values between Butler County and Elmore County, Butler County being green, the median home value in Butler County is much lower than the median home value in Elmore County. The Black population in Butler County is much higher than in Elmore County. And then I'll just call out maybe a few metrics that you can compare, which we call the Black Wealth indicators. Health insurance coverage for Butler County is much lower than that in Elmore County. Broadband internet access, again, lower in Butler County compared to Elmore County. Bachelor's degree attainment. Again, Butler County is faring lower than Elmore County in most of these indicators. So this is how you can use our Black Wealth indicators tool to compare against counties. And you're again able to download each of these Black Wealth indicators boxes here, or you can download the entire page as a PDF. We also have connections back to our Explore data pages. So this is a quick overview of how we've built our website and how we're making data available to the public. I'm going to stop my screen share. One question that we get asked a lot of time is, it's great that you're making this data available, but are people actually using this data? We hear a lot from nonprofits, and I've looked through the chat, and I think that a lot of people here from nonprofits and attending this webinar. A lot of nonprofits reach back out to us and say that they use our statistics, especially data disaggregated by race, when they're applying for grants. So that has been the biggest use case. But we've also had journalists use our data when they write about racial wealth equity. We have real estate developers who are using our zip code level data when they are building home ownership and thinking about decisions that drive intergenerational wealth. So these are a few examples of how the Blackwell Data Center's data is being used. With that said, I'm going to pass it back to Rachel.
Thanks, Harsha. Very fun to see as always. And before we get into all the fantastic questions coming into the Q&A, I'll just share two quick examples of other things that automated reporting and dashboards are being used for in the social sector. So these are examples of projects DataKind has partnered with nonprofits on, so you can get a sense of a different variety of types of ways we can work in different organizations. So one example is an organization called Voto Now Viamo, a Ghana-based tech startup that amplifies the voices of the underrepresented. So they have a platform that uses integrated SMS and voice calls in local languages to reach underrepresented in hard-to-reach rural areas. So they originally wanted to do surveys for large international organizations and nonprofits, but they were confronted with the challenge of low-tech phones and illiterate people and people who don't speak the language of the surveyors. And so if you can't read or speak the language, how are you going to answer the survey? So these barriers caused folks in the least accessible areas, in poor areas, to have lower response rates to surveys and less data collected about them. So this is referred to as a data desert. It's somewhere where, from a policy perspective, the population that you want to learn the most about is the population that you have the least data about. So Voto focuses on getting to know those communities to collect data on those populations that are rarely surveyed and provide information to them and work with the government locally to provide ways to deliver messages on education and health, for instance, to these populations that can't access it because of their remoteness or lack of infrastructure. So Voto Mobile had 14 multi-country, multi-survey internal data sets that they wanted to use to understand how they can do a better job reaching out to rural women. And rural women represent a population that's difficult to reach by mobile phones. So they often live in areas in the country with poor or little cell network access. And a lot of them also rely on a spouse or another family member to access a shared mobile device instead of having their own phone. So Voto believed that features of their outreach and call strategy, like the language options offered to respondents or the length of the survey, time of day called, these things might influence the rate at which rural women are successfully completing a survey. So voice doesn't only allow illiterate people to be heard literally and get their data collected so that we can make policy decisions and best support them. They also convey more data than simple SMS. So Voto had data on time spent on the phone, the language used in parts of the world where there's lots of different regions and different dialects. They know where folks are and what language they're responding to, as well as the number of attempts it took to get the person. So that could be good timing or network breakdown information on connectivity. And so DataKind built an interactive data plotting tool so that once the data is collected, Voto can do their own data exploration. DataKind wasn't like, oh, let's just look at this data and find your answers to your questions, right? The reason a dashboard was the right solution here is because Voto needed to be able to continuously monitor their data and look at how things are changing so that they can modify their engagement strategies accordingly. So no matter where they are in their partnership, the dashboard will continuously be updated. So with this, Voto is able to evaluate key metrics of their outreach strategy, like response rates, and connect them to features of their strategy, like their language options, the time of day they're going to make calls, how long their surveys are, and all of that. So this allows them to make informed decisions on targeting, outreach, and strategy. So as opposed to the Black Wealth Data Center tool, which is a public tool that many nonprofits and maybe many of you are using, this is an example of an organization using an internal tool to make decisions for their own strategy and understand their data and their operations better in real time, which is, from what I'm seeing in the chat, some of you all have a more internal focused strategic decision-making purpose for using one of these tools. And then another example is based in DC, which is where I am. So I'm particularly excited about this project with the DataKind DC chapter, focusing on systematically underserved communities that are disproportionately impacted by stressors like the pandemic, racism, public policy decisions. And so many of these communities in Washington, D.C. and adjacent Prince George's County are served by this partner, starting with Today, a local nonprofit that has really grown a lot rapidly in the last few years to meet demand for much needed services. And so they wanted to really focus on using data to help meet those needs, as they've been a long time community-based organization with their boots on the ground here in DC. And so Starting with Today also works with individuals who have limited access to technology, and in settings where things like mental health services, there's stigma and there's privacy concerns around data tracking. And so it was really important in our partnership with Starting with Today to keep responsible data use and ethics and privacy at the forefront of our project design to make sure that folks are protected as individuals on the sensitive data topic. So DataKind creatively came up with a multiple open data source, open data set and web scraping product that would allow Starting with Today to visualize areas of the highest needs and potential partners for its mission. So this is another tool that is meant for the Starting with Today team to use internally, but as opposed to Voto, who used internal data and all their call logs and all their data they had internally on their surveys, Starting with Today wanted to use public data to protect the privacy of their individuals. And so the team used data on poverty, depression, health insurance, income inequality, internet access, vehicle access, education, walkability, and more, using a variety of public data sets in the US, including the US Census Bureau, the CDC, the EPA, and nonprofit data from idealist.org. And so DataKind developed the Starting With Today Community Needs and Resources dashboard. And so the dashboard had many features that Starting With Today can use for decisions in their organization. And one example of how it's used to help Starting With Today identify community needs and resources is that the user can select a service area, and a map will locate organizations that provide services in that area. For example, mental health in a certain zip code. And so the user can also use a scoring algorithm to indicate the needs that are of greatest interest to them, and a census tract heat map can populate to indicate those areas of greatest need. So you can focus on an area, find out what's available in that area from a resources side, and then you can focus on a need, again, maybe mental health as an example, and find the areas where there's greatest needs. So this allows Starting With Today to understand where those greatest needs are. And we also were careful to provide detailed information of each individual feature prior to data standardization, so that the team has context on where the data is coming from, which is another big part of responsible data decision-making. And so with this new dashboard, Starting With Today is able to plan out future in-person workshops to be located in those areas of greatest needs based on the highest risk factors. And this was just created in this last year. So now that you've seen 3 examples of ways DataKind is supporting automated reporting and dashboards, I want to leave you with a few different tools before we go into Q&A that might be helpful for you in getting started. First, on the left side here, you'll see examples of public-facing dashboards. So there's lots and lots of Blackwell Data Center. You already saw that in the chat and live. It's just one example, and it's helpful to get started to just explore what's already out there and get ideas from those. And then when you are ready to get started, there are some tutorials and guides. So if you want to help build a data culture around using dashboarding, Power BI has a great adoption roadmap that I've linked in the chat. And if you want to focus on automated reporting, there's this dashboard subscriptions from Metabase that has some really great guidelines on how to do that and what that looks like. So those are just 2 resources. And then finally, we have a few relevant DataKind resources. Our DataKind playbook has tons of resources relevant to supporting this type of work, including articles on data inclusion and defining deliverables. And then we also have many other nonprofit data 101 webinars like this one on topics that are relevant here. So that includes data engineering and infrastructure, as Jaya mentioned, is part of the input for your dashboarding tool, and getting all your data connected so that you can have results that use data from multiple sources. And then non-data stakeholder engagement. Jaya also mentioned the importance of iteration and defining your key metrics with all your stakeholders. That comes up a lot in that webinar. So hopefully both of those resources would be really useful as well if you're getting started with this. So with that, thank you. We have tons of time for questions. Great to hear. And I'll kick us off with one for Jaya. Or well, maybe both of you, but we'll start with Jaya. What do you think about Excel? How does it stack up against the other dashboarding tools?
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, I think Excel is a great tool and is often like an input to dashboarding tools. Excel oftentimes doesn't have a lot of the visualization functionalities, as well as like transformation functionalities, which dashboard tools have. So many times like Excel will be imported into a tool like Power BI, Tableau, or something like that to then create dashboards and reports. Also don't think you can do automated reporting for Excel, but Excel is definitely good for doing like quick analysis and calculations, and maybe can be used downstream of like a Power Query as well.
Awesome. Harsha, do you have anything to add on your thoughts on Excel?
I mean, like the only thing I was going to add is that like if you have like really small data, and you're just getting started, like even like playing with the visualization tools in Excel and like getting familiarized with like how do you want to like show display data can be helpful. It also depends on your organization culture. Like, do you want people to like filter data, like interact with live data visualization? Are you just pulling data visualizations into a PowerPoint presentation? It just depends on like a lot of use cases. But like starting with Excel could be like a very low lift before you try to figure out like what tech stack you might need to scale the operation on.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think Excel is useful for building like an example. If your organization is brand new to this, to show your stakeholders, hey, here's what we can do. And if we invest in this other tool, it can be automatically updated with new data. We can have it customized for different users so that people can see different versions. But like, here's an example in Excel. So that's a good getting started resource. Okay, let's go to a question but speaking of Excel, as you might already have it, for communities that are just getting started with dashboards with budget constraints, are there any free dashboard tools you can use? Tableau public is free, so if you don't need your data to be private, that is a really good place to start. Jay and Harsha, do you have anything else you want to add?
Yeah, I can Tableau Public definitely. I think there's some tools which have free options where you might not have like white labeling. For example, Metabase has a free as well as a much cheaper option. That's on a per user model. And then Power BI is also one of the more budget friendly tools to use.
Harsha, any other thoughts?
I was going to mention Power BI that at least their desktop option is free. So like when I was working for a city in New Jersey and I didn't have a budget to buy Tableau online licenses, I just downloaded Power BI's desktop option and I was able to make data visualizations for free, though you really can't share it.
So there you go. You could get started for free with those. Another free option is using like R or Python. R Shiny is an example. And there's a question on that, comparing point and click methods. Is it better to use these point and click methods over R or Python? What do you all think? Jay, you want to kick us off?
Sure. I think like in terms of like a no code solution, if you don't have the background and using R, Python, SQL, potentially using like these point and click dashboard methods are better. But then if you have that background and that knowledge, sometimes it might be more flexible, I think, to use. It can be more flexible to use like Shiny or Shiny, but might take more time.
Anything you want to add? Yeah, I would. That's been my experience as well. And Harsha mentioned that there's one section of visualizations that were created using a coding solution. And so sometimes you have a really custom need that isn't possible with those. And so that's a time, but it takes more time. You need more skills. So it really depends on your specific situation. We have another question kind of asking about their specific situation. I know that the answer you all will share will be that we need more information than this, but let's hear some first initial thoughts from Jay and Harsha on if someone has various different data sets of different sizes, ranging from hundreds of rows for a program to a larger database with lots of different tables for our platform. Which tool might be a better tool?
Yeah, I can go first. I think like it depends on the size of the data that the visualizations are being created on top of. Even if you have a large amount of data, if you're able to pre-aggregate it, like aggregate it before doing the visualizations, it's not really a problem. But if you're creating tables or visualizations on top of the raw data itself, and there might be tens of millions of rows, it can often be, some of these tools can be slow. Whereas if you just have like a couple million rows, it might be faster. But then if your underlying data is even like hundreds of millions of rows and you're able to pre-aggregate it to like a smaller data set of just maybe a million or two rows, then it would be fine. So not necessarily the size of the data you have now, but the size of the data you have to input into these tools.
Harsha, do you have any more thoughts on that? Awesome.
Yeah, and like even like in the data that we've presented, like we actually do some pre-aggregations before we connect it to like a data visualization tool such as Tableau. That's always a best practice instead of like just connecting your entire database to a data visualization tool. It improves performance drastically.
Awesome. And on that note, so one of our guests would love to hear about the process of automating these reports once they're created in Tableau. Harsha, that might be in reference specifically to your Blackwell Data Center project. Is that right? Do you want to give it a go?
Yes. So unfortunately, the automation process with Tableau Public is not great. Like if you're actually using a Tableau server where it's not a public facing tool, they have like pretty streamlined built-in versions of automating the reports where you can actually schedule a daily refresh or weekly refresh, like just based on like how often the data needs to be refreshed. Tableau Public, which is the freer version, does not have that option, and that is what we use. It's a little tricky. Like you need to connect the outputs of your database to a Google Sheet that needs to be refreshed, and then that gets connected to Tableau Public. So it's not the most straightforward way. So one thing is like, if you're thinking of using Tableau Public, like this is like one of the limitations around like automating or transforming data using Tableau Public as a tool.
Awesome. Jay, do you have any thoughts about that transition as well, more broadly?
Yeah, definitely from an external facing. I guess internal facing, in terms of like doing reports, there are two, I think Tableau has two things. They have Tableau extracts and they have the Tableau live connections. And so live connections will just update your reports real time as the underlying data sets you connected update. And so you can like set reports, automated reports based on the live data. And then there's the Tableau extracts, which refresh the data and the reports on some cadence. It can be like every hour, day, week, and then you can set reporting based on those cadence. And it's more streamlined for, I think, like Tableau Online and Tableau Server rather than Tableau Public.
Great. Another question is, what are some common communication challenges when you're trying to make sure people like caseworkers, community organizers with non-technical backgrounds can fully understand and utilize dashboards for their specific needs and purposes? There are a lot that come up. I see Harsha smiling. I will start by saying we did an entire webinar on this topic in July called Non-Data Stakeholder Engagement. So please watch the recording of that to get some examples from different partners and more thoughts. But the first thing I see is that a lot of times what people say they want initially is not like, it isn't really always connected to the way that you translate it into a data solution. And so it's really important to iterate a lot and have maybe a mock-up or version 1 and share that and get feedback and be ready to make a lot of changes, and don't assume that your first interpretation of what they need is the right thing, and be ready to throw a lot of work away and start over if things are not what they look like, because a lot of times people really need to see something to be able to communicate their needs. Harsha, do you have anything you want to add to that?
Like on the data center side of it, like I think there is also a question about like the center's responsibility in putting data out that can be misrepresented, especially because the data that we put out is like racial wealth equity data. Like I did walk through the state map where when you change the filter from like white to black, when you're looking at assets and debt, you see that like for most of the states, there is not enough information. So right now, like when we look at estimates and margins of error, if the sender feels like this estimate does not have like low enough margin of error or has like really high margins of error, we actually suppress that data because we don't think that data is actionable. So if you're an organization who wants to put out data to the public, just making sure that like not everyone's like data savvy or can interpret like margins of error, and like what is your responsibility to make sure data is not misinterpreted, misused.
Yeah. Jay, do you have anything to add? Any other ideas? Cool. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. A couple quick Blackwell data setter focus questions. Is data available in the UK? And have you done any analysis from the last few years?
So like the data that we use, it's like data that is collected by US federal agencies. So and like the analysis that we do is limited to like the United States of America. So we like our mission is limited to like what's happening in America. So we don't use or analyze any data from the UK. Like yes, so we as I showed in the first map, we try to like provide at least like 10 years of data where it's available. Like we always show trends over time because I think that is more meaningful than just showing a data point at one instant in time. Because like for those who are working on the ground, they also want to understand how are things changing, are things getting better, do things remain the same, are things getting worse. So yeah, those are some of the things that we think about and grapple with as well.
Awesome. A question on identity resolution. So can either of you talk a bit about any types of identity resolution that you've had to do in combining and preparing your data, lessons learned, and favorite tools?
Sure, I can maybe speak about this. I guess for identity resolution would be like connecting the same like entity matching. I'm guessing here is like connecting the same like entity across different data sets. This can often be a tricky thing. And so there are many different ways to do this, from like exact entity matching where you have 2 or 3 fields. Like it could be like if it's individuals or organizations, it could be like name and address and email matches across different data sets. And then there's also probabilistic entity matching, where it'll do things like you can look at similarity of strings between different columns between different data sets to see like how likely they are to be similar. And there's a lot of algorithms that are associated with probabilistic entity matching. In terms of like favorite tools, lessons learned, it can definitely be a tricky thing, and there are a lot of tools which like focus on providing a probability because you might not get an exact match. In terms of like favorite tools, I think there are Python libraries that like help with this in terms of like doing the probabilistic as well as like exact entity matching. But whether these tools are integrated into dashboard solutions, I don't know that. It might be more of a exact identity resolution based on a few columns which are exactly the same, but doing more complicated probabilistic algorithms might not be available in dashboarding tools, and you have to use something like Python.
Yeah, I've seen some coming out with some, especially like AI tools that try to do some of it for you using algorithms. But I think it really depends on what tools you're already using, as that's just one piece of the puzzle most of the time. It's not your only goal. So a lot of even like Salesforce is a popular database for nonprofits, right? They have some like deduplicating automation in place. And so expanding on and using the tooling that is working for other reasons that you're using might be helpful as well. Harsha, do you have anything you want to add on that topic?
So we've done some probabilistic identity matching for nonprofit in Connecticut where the underlying question was we wanted to understand like how many Black-owned businesses operate in the state. And like we ran a fuzzy matching based algorithm using Python, like based on like the zip code and the last name of the owner when that information was available. But this was done in Python. Like we didn't like do, I don't know if a data visualization tool can do this kind of analysis. And the other thing is that like when we work with like federal agencies, like the definitions of race are not standard across like all of the federal agencies. They have like some minimal standards, but we spend a lot of time looking at like the race categories that are in that are defined in each of the federal agencies, just to make sure that like across when we are trying to like join data sets across several federal agencies, we're using the race categories.
Yeah, absolutely. A really great question just came in on potential additional costs or work beyond the initial implementation. So maintaining existing data pipelines, building new ones, monitoring. I would love to hear from both of you, but Harsha would love to hear just an overview of the typical time and resources to build the kind of thing you've shown us. How many people worked on it? How long did it take? What other costs did you have? And then Jay, I would love to hear your thoughts as well on this question.
Yeah, so like for the Blackwell data center, like what do you see the public facing platform? It was a pretty time intensive effort. I know like DataKind knows this. If Caitlin's here, I'm sure like she will have like stories to share. But like we took about 6 months to like build the initial platform, and we launched in September of last year, and we've continued to make improvements to the MVP. We had like 4 contractors from DataKind and like a full-time staff of 3 from the Blackwell data center. So roughly between 7 to 8 people like working full-time to like get this going. And this is just like the dashboarding side of it, but like we also have a database that we maintain where we build data infrastructure pipelines that get refreshed. We also do a lot of quality checks, quality assurances. So like we do a lot of coding, automating, using tools such as Airflow, data transformations using dbt. So it's a pretty intensive effort for us to get to a place where we feel comfortable sharing this to the public. But if it's an internal operation, like you can always start small and then like gradually scale based on the needs of your organization.
Yeah, that's a lot of people. So good to be mindful of. Jay, any thoughts on this?
Yeah, I agree with all of that. It's definitely like after you create the dashboard, the work doesn't end there. You have to continue to monitor the reliability and like, of the data, the trustworthiness of it, especially as things change. Because if like there's underlying problems with the data, that'll just be reflected in the dashboard as well. So it's good to like constantly be monitoring.
Great. So we are at time on these questions. Unfortunately, we've answered 2/3 of them. I'll just quickly say there are a good amount of questions on specific budgets for your specific situation. There isn't a one-size-fits-all answer. We would recommend reaching out to the vendors you're considering and asking them for quotes so that you can know the exact pricing. Tell them you're a nonprofit and see what discounts they can give you. So you'll have to talk to sales folks to get that answer. And then there are also some other software options mentioned here, and we didn't have time to go through every software that's available, but please feel free to join us for office hours if you have any more follow-up questions, especially about what we do at DataKind specifically. So there's a link that's going to be shared in the chat to sign up for office hours. And we also mentioned some of the previous Nonprofit Data 101 webinars that we have a YouTube playlist with all of them, so you can check them all out there. And then finally, if you would like to share what topic you want us to cover next, this topic today came from these survey results. Several people asked for this. So if you want to let us know what you want to hear about, we will plan our next Nonprofit Data 101 based on what comes out of that survey. So please complete it. And then if you want to get involved with DataKind, please subscribe to our newsletter is really the best way to know what's going on. And I do want to share, we have lots of events happening in September. If you are a volunteer interested in volunteering at our data dive, we'll share some links for how to sign up for that. And we have one in person in DC as well as some virtual options. And I thought I had one more slide here, but complete our closing poll. Sorry about that. Please, before we go, take a minute to let us know what you think and what you learned from this session so that we can design future sessions accordingly. And thanks again for being a part of our session, and we hope you learned a lot, and we'll see you next time. I'll share the results in just a second. And thanks so much. Big thanks to our speakers, Harsha and Jaya, for joining us today.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Awesome. We'll share everything via email. It looks like almost all of you have completed our closing poll, 95% participation in this poll. So thank you so much. And looks like everyone's been learning in this session today. And we will see you next time. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Rachel. Thanks, Jaya.